this video, we will use Adobe XD to design a style tile. Once you've collected inspirational elements such as fonts, colors, imagery, and graphical elements to create a mood board, the next step in the design process is to design a semi-fleshed out style tile. A style tile is a low-fidelity collection of design elements that communicate your design direction to your client or developer. Your style tile may include specific color swatches, font styles, button styles, and icons. A style tile is not as robust as a style guide. A style guide would include any and all of your final design rules and UI elements to be used within a design system. Style tiles should be kept very simple in terms of design so that you can make changes to your core components before moving on to create more complex ones. Creating a style tile before moving on to develop your style guide will save you time during the exploration stages, and it gives your client an opportunity to suggest changes during the design process. Before we get started, remember to go through the discovery phase and do your research on your client, their consumer, competition, and current design system before sketching out any preliminary ideas for your style tile. You want to experiment with various shapes, lines, colors, and layouts for your UI elements so that you can flesh them out and choose a final direction for your design components. To get started, I've sketched a style tile layout that I'll be using as a guide. It's just a rough idea of where I would like to position my elements on the page within XD. I also have a folder with some images, color swatches that I've chosen, and the logo I'll be using for my redesign. I'll keep this folder positioned off to the side and bring in these assets when needed. The first thing I'll do is launch Adobe XD and create a new document. I'll choose the default web layout of 1920 by 1080. Next, I'll set up my grids by going to the property panel and turning on my grid layout at the bottom of the panel. I'll use 16 grid lines with no margins on the left and right side. To position my elements on the page, I'll place an element on the left-hand side of a grid column and end on the right-hand side of another grid column. Never start on the left-hand side of a grid column and end on the left. Otherwise, you'll cross over the gutter space. The gutter space is used to create even spacing between elements, and it also provides consistency and rhythm to your layout. I'll need to provide a space for my logo, adjectives that describe the tone and feel of my design, such as classic, cultured, and confident, typography, including a couple headings and a paragraph style, iconography samples, button style samples, colors, and imagery. With the imagery, I'll include how the images should be treated as far as art direction, effects, etc. So the first thing I'll do here is create the title of my style tile. So what I'll do is go to my toolbox and select the text tool. And right at the top corner here, I'll just click once. And I'm going to name this as project name. I'll give it like the style tile option, which in this case would be style tile option A. And then maybe I'll label it with the version number. I can decorate this by just highlighting it and going over to my property panel and selecting some styles within my text panel. So maybe I'll just make this bold. I'll leave it at 20 pixels for now. So I'll have the project name as bold and have the style tile version and option as regular. Next, what I'll do is create my heading. So I'll start with the logo, adjectives, typography, iconography, buttons and links, colors, and images. So again, I'll grab my text tool and click once, and I'll just type out logo from here. I'm just going to zoom in, and I'll maybe just create a small line graphic, and also maybe just a circular icon as a pointer. And I'll select these two and then group them by going to Object and selecting Group or Command G. So now what I can do is just zoom back out, and I'm going to hold Option or Alt and click and drag, and I'll create my other titles. So this one will be for my adjectives, and I'll select this again, Option drag, and again we can move these around and position them later on, but this will be where my typography goes. Then I also need my colors and my imagery. I'll copy my typography and colors, and this will be where my button links and my iconography titles go. So again, this is just rough positioning. I can always change this around later on once I start to put my content in. So now that I've styled my headings, I'll create a placeholder for my logo using the rectangle tool. I'll draw out a rectangle, and then I can simply drag my logo image from my project folder over top of the placeholder, and it will place the image inside of its bounding box. So I'll grab my rectangle tool, and I'll just draw out a square or a rectangle that crosses over two grid lines. And then I have my logo in my project folder right here. So I'm just going to drag that logo image right over top of my placeholder, and it will place the logo right inside. Next, I'll use my text tool to type out some adjectives that describe the overall feel and tone of my layout. So again, I'll grab my text tool, and right under the adjective section, I'll just click once, and I'll type out a few adjectives that describe the tone or mood of my design. Could also just highlight these and go back to my property panel and maybe just increase the size of my font. Next, I'll include some samples of my font choices. I've chosen Avenir for headings and subheadings at different weights and sizes. My main heading will be bold at 68 pixels, and my subheading will be a regular or oblique style at 42 pixels. I'll also be labeling these with my regular text, which I'm using Helvetica New. So what I'll do is grab my text tool again. I'll click once. I'll just type in an uppercase letter A and a lowercase a, and then I'll highlight that. Over in my property panel, I'll go over to the text panel and choose Avenir, and then select black from there. And then I'll type in 68 for 68 points. And down below where it says appearance, I can click on that color swatch, and I can just type in the hex code for my colors. So I'm going to be using like a really dark gray. So that code that I'm using is 575757. I'm just going to zoom in. And again, with my text tool, I'm just going to label this. So again, I'm going to use my regular text, which is Helvetica New. I'm just going to be using it as 16 points. And this will just be regular. So this is actually going to be my main heading. And I'll just write some details about the text. So I'll write in what the font name is and what the style is, and then maybe the size and the color hex code. To make this rule stand out, maybe I'll just make the heading here bold. And maybe just add another line space. So your main heading is also maybe known as your H1. So I'll also just label that as well. So now what I can do is maybe showcase what my subheading will look like. So I'll just copy this over, select all of them, hold Option, and copy that over. I can always move these closer if I want to later on. And now I can change some of the specs. So my subheading is actually going to be 42 pixels. This is going to be a subheading. I'm either going to make this like a regular oblique, so book oblique, or I can maybe just choose regular book. I think I like regular better. So I'll also just update this. So this is my subheading. So this would be my H2. And I'll just type subheading in here. And this is going to be regular or book. And this is going to be at 42 pixels. Okay, so now I have an example of my main heading and my subheading, and some details down below that tell my developer what the size of my font is, the style, and the color code. Now I'll include a paragraph style. So to do that, I'm going to create a placeholder using the rectangle tool, And then I'm going to actually use a lorem ipsum plugin just to get some filler text really quickly. When we make our style guides later on, it's best to use actual text rather than filler text to get a true sense of how your type will look in relation to your layout and design. So at the bottom of my toolbox, there's a little plugin icon. I'm going to click on that, and then you'll see a plus sign. You can actually add plugins through here. So I have some of mine already installed, but what you want to do is maybe click the plus sign, then you can click on the search field, and you can search for lorem ipsum. And while we're here, also install icons for design. This will allow us to place in some icons in our iconography section right after this. So to add an example of how a paragraph style might look, I'm again going to create a placeholder using my rectangle tool. And then with my lorem ipsum plugin, I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to click on fill with placeholder text. I could choose my settings from here and then just click insert text. So now that I have some text in here, I can edit my text styles. So again, I'm going to choose Avenir. I'm going to use book for my paragraphs. They're going to be at 16 pixels. Now I can also adjust my line height, so that would be akin to your leading in print. So remember, you want to keep it within 6 to 8 points of interspacing. So you can either have it at 16/20 or 22 or even 24. The farther you get, the more displaced the text will look. So I'm going to keep mine at 16/22. I can also change the color of my text. So if I click on the fill color under my appearance, I can again type in that color code that I've been using for my headings. Down below, I also just want to label this and give it some details for my paragraph style. So again, I might just move these headings down a little bit just so I create some space. And I can maybe copy one of these over since I already have most of the styles already set. And so this is going to be my paragraph. And this is going to be Avenir book at 16 pixels over 22 pixels for my line height. So again, I can zoom out, and then I could just move these down, just create some space, just so that it's clear for my reader to see. Now we'll design some button styles. Again, we can create some samples here and create a default state and a hover state. We don't want to get too detailed before we get into our style guide later on. I'll create a really simple style for this, and I can explore my alternate styles later on my other style tiles once I complete this template. I'll also include some text links and hover text link styles as well. So down below here, again, I'm just going to take my rectangle tool. I'll click and drag a rectangle out. And again, in my properties panel, I can use the transform panel to change my width and my height. So I'm going to make this around 144 pixels wide by 48 pixels high. Now I can also change its color. So I'll make my fill color black, and I can remove the border. Next, I'll take my text tool, and then I'll just type in the word button. I'll hit escape, and again, I can change my fill color to white. And I could just place this over top. And now what I can do is hold the shift key and select the button graphic. And now I can go back to my property panel and go up to my align panel and align this vertically and horizontally to that rectangle. So this will be my default state. If I just click and drag while holding Alt or Option, I can now create my hover state. So maybe I just want the inverse of this. So maybe I want my fill to be white. I want to add a border that's black. And then I want to change my text from white to black. You can also, in your alternates, maybe change like the radius of these buttons here. So down below right here, you can change the radius you can either just tap your up arrow once to go in increments of 1. So maybe I can have a radius of 10, or you can hold the shift key and click once, and that makes it go up in values of 10. So again, you want to experiment with the different shapes, styles, effects on your alternate style tiles. This is just one design style that I will move forward with. So I'm just going to undo that and leave it back to my classic regular style. Right underneath, I can just grab my type tool again, and I'm just going to click on this and type link text, and then I'll just do an option drag, and I'll style this to be my hover link text. So again, I can maybe have like an underline on it. I can also maybe change its color later on, but I'll maybe sample the color once I put in my color schemes. Now we can move on to our icons and go to our Icons for Design plugin and search for any icons we want to include. I'll search for things like an open and close icon, a person or login profile, search icon, shopping cart, and maybe a share icon for now. You don't need to include every single icon that you need for your UI components, so you want to make sure that you use icons that have similar designs so that they are consistent. And now what I can do is go to my Icons for Design plugin, and I can search for some of my icons. So maybe first I'll search for my person icon or login. And by default, it kind of goes right to the top corner here, so we could just move that around. And then we'll just place that below. The next one maybe I'll search for is maybe a search icon. I'll just position that apart and give it some space. Then maybe I'll search for an add icon. And I'll move that over. What I can do as well is I can actually just make a copy of this. So if I'm opening a pop-up module or closing it, I could just rotate it, and that's my close icon. Another icon I'll search for is maybe a shopping cart icon. And maybe just lastly, a share icon. So now what I can do is select all of these, and I can align them. So I can either align them to their centers and also distribute the spacing evenly. Then I can zoom back out, and then I could just maybe align these. And if they go too far over, I could just move them down below. Next, I'll create a few shapes to place my color schemes. You want to include 3 to 5 colors max for your design. Usually you'd have a main color, a secondary color or highlight color, a neutral color, and some text colors. I'll create 5 rectangles and also leave room for labeling the swatches. I'll use my sample tool to sample my color swatches in my project folder and apply them to my shape. Then I'll label each color with either main, secondary, neutral, main text, and maybe disabled text. So what I'll do here is just draw out my first rectangle. I'll make it 2 columns and maybe 75 pixels in height. And then what I'll do is just copy these down. So again, I want 5 rectangles. And then in my appearance panel, I'll select the color picker and just sample the color from that image swatch that I have in my project folder. So this is going to be black. Then I'll select the second one, grab my color picker again, and sample my highlight color. The third one will be my neutral color. And then this one will be my text color. So I know that I'm using that color code, which is 575757. And my last one will maybe just be an alternate color. So maybe I'll start with my original and then just maybe move up in case I have some text that is maybe going to be grayed out. So now I can select all of these and maybe just remove the borders. And now I can grab my text tool and I can click once and I can label these. So this will be my main color. So the hex code for black is just going to be 6 zeros. And now what I can do is just change the fill color to be white so that I can actually see it over top of the black background. So I could just move that up. Now I can copy that down. I can select this rectangle, click on my fill, and get that hex code and just copy it by holding Command or Control C. And then in here, I could just replace that and paste in the new hex code by holding Command V and changing the name to secondary. This can also be my highlight color. I'll copy this over again. This time this is a bit lighter, so maybe I'll change it to black or gray. But again, I want to select the rectangle, click on my fill, copy the hex code, paste that in. This will be my neutral color scheme for maybe my backgrounds. And then maybe I'll change that to my main text color. I'll copy this over again, see what that color scheme is, copy over the hex code, paste that in. I can call that main text. And then again, change my fill to white. And then lastly, I'll grab my alternate text color and paste that hex code in. And label that. Finally, I'll create some placeholders for my images. The cool thing I can do here is I can use the repeat grid feature to create multiple placeholders for my components and then have them grouped automatically. So what I'm going to do is span my image placeholder across 4 grid columns, and then I'm going to adjust my height. So we know that the height of my artboard is 1080 pixels. So what I can do is divide that by 3, and that will actually give me 360 pixels. So I'll type 360 in the height and hit tab. And now I can click on repeat grid, and I can drag this all the way down to the bottom. And then to adjust the spacing in between these, I can hover my cursor over top of the edges, and I can click and drag and move this until it says 0. And now I could just expand this down below. So now that I have my placeholders, what I can do is look to my project folder where I have all 3 of my images here. So I'm going to select all 3, and then I'm just going to click and drag them right over top of the placeholder and release. And because mine are actually numbered, so I have my images numbered 1 through 3, it will actually put it in the order that I want them to be placed in. So now I can adjust these by double clicking and just moving the art direction right within the placeholder, and then double clicking back out. So I can double click on the second one, move that down. But now I could select these and I can remove the border because there's like a gray border on them. So now that we have our layout complete, we can make any adjustments before saving this and making a copy to create our alternate layouts. To make a copy of our artboard, let's double click on the artboard title. So I'll call it project name hyphen, maybe the style tile option, and then the version number. Now to make a copy of this with the title selected, I can hold down Command or Control D, and that will make a copy of my style tile for me. So now I can go in and I can change things like the fonts, the button styles, icon styles, colors, and any other different photo treatments that I'd come up with. So finally, we can save this out by saving it as a local document or in the cloud. If I go up to my file menu, you'll see my saving options here. So I can click on Save As or Save as a local document. I'll maybe save this to the cloud for now. And again, I can give this a name. So again, your project name, style tile, and your version number. And then we can click Save. So now that I've saved my document, I can export these artboards out as JPEGs for my case study blog posts and a PDF for my final submission. I'll first select the artboard, then go up to my file menu, go down to export, and I can either choose selected or all artboards. Because I haven't completed all 3 right now, I'll just choose selected. And now I can go to my project folder in my style tile, maybe under my final folder, and I can either save this as a PNG file, a JPEG, or a PDF. So first I'll maybe save out my JPEG for web. I can click export, and then I can go back to the file menu, go back to export and selected, and this time I can choose PDF. So now we can preview and share our style tiles with our peers, clients, and developers to get feedback on the best direction to move forward with before building our style guide for our fully fleshed out UI design system. I hope you found this tutorial on designing a UI style tile helpful. Feel free to like this video, leave a comment if you have any questions, and share it with others who might find it useful.